So, namaste everyone, and welcome back to another class on Mundaka Upanishad. I will chant the invocation first. You may also chant along with, remembering the welfare of the world at this point. भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्ताक्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So we have established in the first 3 verses of Mundaka Upanishad the lineage starting from Brahmaji itself, handed down up to this point for whoever is a real seeker. By real, I only mean whose interest is in Brahma Vidya. The knowledge, when sought for the sake of Brahma Vidya, that knowledge is not a Paurusheya Praman. Brahma Vidya is apaurushaya. To convey this point, the lineage is set that Brahma Vidya is beyond, above human intelligence or capacity of human being to think, because most of us know this by now. Human beings can only think in the confines of what senses brings as a data. It's a very simple logic. Whatever senses provide as data, human beings can only think along those lines. So thinking is already limited by one's information through the sensory collection of data. Brahma Vidya cannot be gained as a topic of senses for the simple reason Brahma Vidya is knowledge regarding one's nature, which cannot be objectified like other objects. I, as an experience that I have, that experience cannot be objectified like an object and then studied by the senses. So that is the flaw of relying on senses for one's data of one's own self. I'm going to repeat this because it is very essential and fundamental. Why is the lineage emphasized so much? And starting from Brahmaji, the very holder of the Vedas, Veda Mukha, he's the Veda Mukha himself, is to convey to every real student of Atma Vidya, Brahma Vidya, that if you're getting any knowledge in the name of Brahma Vidya as something that can get verified by your senses, then sure enough, this is not that knowledge. For your senses can only give you information on the roads that they travel. So eyes can only give you information of color and form. Ears can only give you information of sounds. Nose can only give you information of smell, etc. So senses can only give you knowledge of the road on which they travel. That is the limitation of any human knowledge acquired by a human being. If the knowledge is going to be dependent on sensory data, then that knowledge is limited in the sense that it cannot give you the knowledge of the experience of I and what is it. When I refer to myself as I am talking, I am listening, I am smelling, I am seeing a garden. I am seeing a garden. And when I say I am seeing a garden, automatically my eyes are gathering the senses of something that it is in front of. But I is not in front like a garden. I am not there in front of my own self to say, okay, now I can get knowledge of this through my senses. So, Ved is the only Praman for Brahma Vidya. To convey that Ved is the Praman for Brahma Vidya, it is referred to as a Paurushaya. It is not dependent, a product of human intelligence, which means it is knowledge sure enough to be gathered with the help of senses because you listen to it. So you listen to Brahma Vidya is the first step. So your ears are involved in it. But the nature of this Vidya in its imparting, that method in which it is imparted, in that methodology, the conveying of the fact that it is not an object is very clear. Means I is not an object gets heard by the one who's listening to this Brahma Vidya. I cannot be objectified. So the minute I listen that I cannot be objectified, I experience cannot be objectified. The statement is a very big statement and a very, very valuable statement. Reflection on it is very worthy. Is I an experience that can be placed in front of me as an experience? That I experience can never be non-separated from me, the cognition of I, the cognition of me, the cognition of aham. Since they cannot be separated, they cannot be separated. Therefore, the knowledge of I as Brahman is tricky because the student and the teacher both, if they are not qualified, either of them is not qualified, they will both, while listening to Vedanta, slip into the mode of acquiring it as an object, objective knowledge. So, to prevent this, the Upanishad starts from the very, very, very first note. When the student has approached, Shaunaka has approached the teacher, Angiras, and has Vidivat Upasannaha, has followed the proper protocol methodology to get the knowledge. The first impression that is given is that once he has approached with Vidhi, he is now ready to understand that this knowledge is subjective. It pertains to my experience of me entirely. And when we say my experience of me, sure enough, it is not devoid of the experience of the world. Me is never devoid of the experience of the world in the sense when we are listening to it in the waking state. That me includes the knowledge of the world. Means I only get the perception here along with the knowledge of the world. So the parampara is set only to convey that it is apaurushaya, so that the student gets inspired, having a great value for those who have been in the past pursuing this knowledge and have succeeded enough that they can now transfer it, translate it, hand it over to the next generation. That inspires every fresh learner. With this, the three verses he has asked in the third verse, Shaunaka has asked, tell me, O Mahatma, O great one, O Guru, tell me that knowledge with which, knowing which, everything gets known. So there's understanding that he has already heard before, that there is something like this, knowing which everything gets known. Now, if we just expand this a little bit, what can be that knowledge knowing which everything will be known? If I know about any object in the world, it will only pertain to that object. If I know about a subject as in a topic like physics, chemistry, space science, anything, it will only pertain to that topic, knowledge, because it is not going to cover all knowledge. Then what is that question meaning? That Esa, what is that one knowledge by which I will know everything? Does he mean to say that by knowing that I will know physics and geometry and everything? He means to say that what is that one underlying knowing principle? If I understand that, then I will know knowledge. I will know how knowledge takes place. And that underlying principle of knowledge, which is common to all knowledges, whether it is knowledge of physics or chemistry or etc., or gardening or cooking, all of them has a bottom line of knowledge. He says, give me that knowledge. And the example we took was when you have a lot of ornaments looking golden, then the question is, what is this common thing that seems to be in all these, which looks like golden, different ornaments, but all golden? What is this goldenness pertaining to? So it becomes very easy for the teacher to answer because the question is very specific. He said, what is the goldenness that I see in all these different ornaments? That is common. This is extreme form of Viveka Buddhi, in fact, showing that Shaunaka, who has been said was a great Grahastha, was abiding in his duties, Mahashalaha. He was abiding in his duties, and by sheer performance of duties, his Vaidika Grahastha Karma duties, he had Chitta Shuddhi. So his question that he saw the difference and he also notices something common, but he doesn't know what it is. So the question is, what is this common thing which seems to be graspable, generally speaking, but I do not have specific knowledge of it? That means translate this in Atma Vichar. It means I'm seeing life everywhere. I see conscious beings. I see everyone referring to themselves as I. And the same person I is referring to another as you, which means I am saying I and you are saying I and you. So I refer to I as myself and you refer to yourself as I and me as you. This is common everywhere. What is this I that is common? And how is the perception of you also so common to everyone? So his question is extremely worthy of reflection. I have always maintained throughout that Upanishad knowledge is only unfolded when we even understand and appreciate the question. These students of the Upanishads are also not ordinary thinking people. Because they have arrived at the right conclusion about things and they have sought the right question, that itself for us is a great learning to first fully appreciate the question. And when the question gets grasped in its clarity, then the knowledge that is unfolded also gets grasped with clarity. So, what is that one knowledge? Which knowing, I will know everything. And this, the teacher is going to start answering from the 4th verse. Before that, I will quickly chant the verses for whatever its sake. My chanting is not perfect, but I won't say it is not correct either. But just for its own sake, these are not by the swaras. The swara is only for the invocation. This is handed so that we remember in a tune, so that it's pleasing to the ear, and therefore we also get the meaning. I'll do the first 4 verses together. Om Brahma Devanam Prathamah Sambhabhuva Vishwasya Karta Bhuvanasya Gopta Sa Brahma Vidyam Sarva Vidya Pratishtham Atharvaya Jeshtaputraya Praha Atharvaniyam Pravadeta Brahma Atharvatam Purovachangire Brahma Vidyam Sa Bharadvajaya Satyavahaya Praha Bharadvajo Angirase Paravaram Shaunako Havai Mahashalaha Angirasam Vidivadupasannah Papracha Kasminnu Bhagavo Vijñāte Sarvamidam Vijñātam Bhavatiti Tasmai Sahovacha Tve Vidye Veditavye Itihasmayat Brahma Vido Vadanti Parachaiva Paracha. The 4th verse I'll do again. Tasmai Sahovacha Dve Vidye Veditavye Iti. I'll do this again. Tasmai Sahovacha Dve Vidye Veditavye Itihasmayat Brahma Vido Vadanti Parachaiva Paracha. So now, the 4th verse, he says, Tasmai, the first word of the verse. Tasmai, to him. To whom? To Shaunaka, who has asked the question in verse 3. Saha ha uvacha. Saha means he. He is the teacher. Angiras. Uvacha said. Ha is just a participle, indeclinable, to say indeed, certainly. Tasmai to Shaunaka. Saha uvacha. Saha, referring to Angiras, the teacher. Uvacha said. What did he say? The question was, what is that one with which I know everything? The teacher is not going to give a direct answer again. Shankara in his Bhashyam will explain that. First, the teacher says, Dve vidye veditavya. Veditavya. Tavya ending means should be, ought to be. It is a suffix which means ought to be done, should be done. What? Ved, to know. Should be known. Veditavya, should be known. What? Dve vidye. There are two dve vidye, two vidyas that should be known. Iti. This answer was given in this manner by Angiras. Hasma is again indeclinable. What are these two vidyas? He says further, this has been stated by, Angiras says, I'm not saying this, Angiras says, Yat Brahma Vidaha Vadanti. Those who are the knowers of Brahma Vidya, they say this. So the knowers of Brahma Vidya say that there are two knowledges, Dve Vidye, which should be known, that ought to be known. Means everyone must have these two knowledges. Question is, what is that one knowledge knowing which I will know everything? Answer is, everyone should gain these two knowledges. What are these two knowledges? Para cha eva aparacha. Para and apara. Two knowledges as para and apara. Shankara says, that why a teacher will not give straight away the answer. He could have very easily just said, Brahman is the one thing to know, knowing which you know everything. But no, he says there are two things to be known. Para. Para refers to the higher, real. Apara, not para. So there is two knowledge. One is a para knowledge and the other is not para, apara knowledge. Shankara says this is the technique in which knowledge is unfolded. A teacher who has Brahma Vidya will never say this is the truth, accept it. Le lo. Maine bol diya na. A lot of us, when we tell our children, I have said it, means it's done. Now you follow whatever, whether you understand or not. Brahma Vidya is not imparted like that. Brahma Vidya, the teacher first puts up the contentions, the fallacious thinking that each one holds in themselves. And he presents that first, and then he gives the rectification of that knowledge. He corrects that knowledge. So there is a knowledge presented which is not right, fallacious in the context of Brahma Vidya. That is also given as knowledge first. And then its negation, how to see it correctly, what is the right knowledge, that is also given. So when that contentious knowledge is presented, it is called Purva Paksha. And when knowledge is presented, correcting that fallacious thinking, that is Siddhanta. So Shankara says, this is in the Bhashyam of this verse, Shankara says that the teacher here, Angiras, he started by saying there are two knowledges that the knowers of Brahman say that everyone should have. What are they? Higher and not higher. Now, if you are again listening attentively with discernment and not just a passive listening, you will again get some sort of a viveka here that automatically implies that knowledge has been divided as higher and lower, lower as in not higher, negated as this is not that knowledge. What is higher knowledge? To know what is higher knowledge, I will first have to also understand what is not higher knowledge. And what is not higher knowledge is called Apara Vidya. Knowing Apara Vidya, I will get greater clarity about Paravidya. So, what is Apara Vidya? That is what he's going to talk of in the next verse, which we are just starting today. Excuse me again. Tatra pararikvedo yajurvedas samavedo atharvavedah shiksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chando jyotishamiti atha parayaya tadaksharamadigamyate Tatra pararikvedo yajurvedas samavedo atharvavedah shiksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chando jyotishamiti atha parayaya tadaksharamadigamyate. So he says now, Tatra, amongst these two, Apara, he first enumerates what is Apara Vidya. Apara knowledge, not higher knowledge. What is that? And the list is interesting. Rigvedaha, Yajurvedaha, Samavedaha, Atharvavedaha. All the four Vedas. All the four Vedas is not Paravidya. It is Aparavidya. Moreover, the Vedangas, Anga of Veda, which help understand the Vedas, the six Vedangas, which is Shiksha, Kalpaha, Vyakaranam, Niruktam, Chandaha, Jyotisham, Iti. So 4 plus 6, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakaranam, Niruktam, Chanda, Jyotisham. 6 plus 4, Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva. All 10 are called Apara Vidya. Very interesting. All 10 are Apara Vidya. 4 Vedas, which we are talking as the real Praman for Brahma Vidya. And Ved itself is enumerated as Apara Vidya. And then what is Shiksha? Shiksha is phonetics, the knowledge of pronunciation. So letters, varnas, like we have studied in Sanskrit, we know ka, kha, ga, kha. The nasal, most of us don't know how to pronounce. Na. Cha, cha, ja, cha, nya. We haven't been taught to pronounce properly. Shastra says that words is not actually letters. How we write letters? Letter is not the word. Letter is only a symbol indicating the pronunciation of that. So when you see a that letter, it's a symbolic representation of the sound that has to come. The sound that has to come when you see that letter there, that sound, how to pronounce that, make that sound, that knowledge is called shiksha. Why? Because just by sheer shifting of pronunciation, a word can have a different meaning. A lot of us do not have the correct pronunciation of the nasals because we have studied in modern education, and a lot of us have gone to convent schools, and Sanskrit was only a subsidiary subject, that also choice. So we were more emphatic about how to learn English letters, those indicate English. But the difficulty is that a lot of, in learning English, you have to learn the letter and the words because the pronunciation can shift. We have a lot of such English words, no? I can't think of anything at the moment. Where even a silent P in the beginning or something like this, and the meaning can change. The word changes, pronunciation remaining the same, but the meaning will differ. But in Vedas, every letter that you see there has an exact pronunciation. Not only has an exact pronunciation, it has variations of tones in it. Udata, Swarata, Anudata. Not only this, it has variations of length of time in which you pronounce that syllable. So it is a, and a. So there is a rasva, dirgha, pluta. So each letter that you would be associating, the sound called the Veda, would be all those words that when you hear them, if it's sung in the right manner, said in the right manner, in the right pronunciation, you will get the meaning of the word because the pronunciation is right. So one of the angas before one learns Vedas was shiksha. Importance of pronunciation of the letters, because pronunciation doesn't mean it makes me a very nice person or something like that. It just means it is a sound. That sound must be articulated properly, and that is a vidya. It's a vidya lost to all of us and most of us now, even when we are the very mantras, these mantras, all Upanishads had their own mantras, chanting rules. But in time, we have lost it all. For whatever reasons, it's lost. There are very few Upanishads left with the mantras. And that also, when we come to Vedanta, most of us are just learning the knowledge part of it. We don't have this knowledge of Shiksha, etc. So we just learn Brahma Vidya without all this knowledge. Doesn't matter. Not that it's necessary. That's not the point. Here, the point that is being emphasized is what is Apara Vidya, which is also to be known. Having known it, then you say this is Apara. This is not Brahma Vidya. So Shiksha is a Vidya that you get. That Vidya which you have learned, so people spend so much time learning this. Having learned this Vidya, which will be an Anga for Brahma Vidya, because of that you will learn Brahma Vidya, the student must discern that it is not the word that is going to give Brahma Vidya. So Shiksha is phonetics. Then we have kalpaha. Kalpaha is rituals, knowledge of performance of rituals. How to perform, excuse me, excuse me. How to perform the rituals, etc. What mantras to be chanted and what ritual, all that. So whole science of performance of rituals, which devata to be invoked, with what mantras, with what chanting, etc. That is called kalpa. The importance of kalpa means it's also a knowledge to be gained. The importance of kalpa was this would equip a person to perform his Vedic karmas. Performance of Vedic karmas meant that you're on the path of the Purusharthas and ultimately making yourself eligible for Moksha Purushartha. So, only when you know how to do the rituals can you do the rituals. Most of us, again, today, like Shiksha's lost, Kalpa certainly lost to all of us. We depend on the Pandits a lot. We depend on the priests a lot to perform even our some basic rituals that we hold on to, more for superstition than for anything else. Just because it's been handed down and people have said you must do these karmas, therefore we continue to do those karmas like Shraddh karma or Upanayanam ceremony. But we don't do karmas because they are the duties as prescribed by the Vedas that has to be done. And I'll give you just one very small common sense example in present times. Do we need to be told by somebody that water needs conservation? It should be common sense to all of us. But we don't understand this. So only when a law is going to be made that you will only get this much water per house. When initially we all had those kind of restrictions, the water only came for 1 hour a day or something like this. Now it is a restriction for whose benefit? Why is the restriction put there? It is something that we should have done voluntarily. But no, we wouldn't want to do it because we somehow find it inhibiting our freedom. Therefore, till it gets to the point that we are forced to follow it. Like, for example, yes, there is virus around. Yes, we were supposed to stay indoors. Yes, we were supposed to maintain all the disciplines. Why do we need a government to put restrictions on us? Is our common sense not adequate for us? Does it not give us enough knowledge that this is something that is going to take a toll on life everywhere? No, but we will have restrictions put there for us to understand the value. Religious duties, what Vedas gave to everyone, these religious duties meant, of course, they restrict your time and freedom and comforts, and they restrict. But for whose benefit? Because without performance of religious actions, it is not possible for us to get certain level of maturity of the mind. And this connection is very difficult for people to understand. So most of the people will only take it on faith, or they think it's superstition, etc. But there is a connection. For a period of time when Vedic karmas means religious karmas, in this context, karmas, they were the only karmas that were to be done. When karmas are done, there is a certain maturity that evolves in human mind. It is that maturity that makes a person qualified for Brahma Vidya, which Shaunaka has come to ask for, because he had the knowledge of Kalpa. He was doing his duties. Therefore, he qualified himself for it. So, Kalpa meant a whole science of rituals, a whole knowledge of rituals. Was it for everybody to be done? Not necessary. Whatever was in your shakha, whatever was given to you, whatever was coming to you to be done was what was to be done. Everybody didn't have to do all the Vedas, etc. There was a system that had evolved around it. Keeping that in mind, Kalpa is also one of the branches of knowledge which equips a person to enable them, empower them. Another example I can give you is when people, supposing you have money, if you have money, you get equipped to do charity. But if you don't have money, you are dependent on someone else's charity. Now, same thing. If you have knowledge of whichever field you have knowledge, you get equipped by that field. Kalpa meant doing your daily alaukik karmas, those that involve Ishvara in some form or the other. When they are done over a period of time, now you are equipping yourself with one of the finest and the rarest things. I keep using the word rare because I have no other perception of this knowledge. I just think it's rare bhagyam to understand and appreciate all this that Vedas were offering to mankind as freely as oxygen and water was given. But as we misuse and abuse all these things, we have also lost the touch with the Vedas and letting them guide our lifestyles. We have chosen the path of independence, freedom, right in its own place, or not right is not the debate. The question here is only that we have missed hugely a great opportunity of evolving ourselves to rise above our own individual perceptions of individuality restricted by our likes and dislikes and egoism. So, kalpa meant that you were going to be enabled, you were going to be empowered, you were going to qualify yourself to be able to do certain karmas regularly, which would have in turn qualified the maturity of the person. Yes, in the context of the Gita, it has become Karam Yoga, but here the context is the Upanishad. That is the Kalpa. Then the next one was Vyakaranam. Vyakaranam, of course, grammar. Only when you know why this word is in this place and all that, there is a whole science behind. Like I just said, Veditavya. What importance of this word Veditavya is to understand why this word is so important. And what is the Shruti really trying to tell us when it says to be known? Para and apara is to be known. Translation will not hit you as hard as when you understand the word tavya. Whenever it is used, mantavya, jnatavya, to be gained, to be got, when there's emphasis on the word Ved, to emphasize, to know, should be known, that tavya word suddenly gives you a different alertness. That tavya word puts you like shivers you, or it's like a lightning thrown on you to say that it is to be known. It's urgent. It is important. It's like how you see messages. It's urgent. I need plasma. I need this. There is alertness that comes up. That tavya word brings alertness to those who have vyakarna gyan. It is to be gained. That knowledge is also to be gained. That is vyakarna. Of course, it's a long process of gaining the knowledge. That is why it is to be gained. But by gaining that knowledge, you enable how to understand Brahma Vidya, which he is going to come to. Then there is Niruktam. Niruktam is more understanding the etymology of the words, how they come and how they combine to form verses, etc., which also again helps to understand the importance of this. We have all lost this knowledge, so we don't even understand the importance of Niruktam. But we all take it, most of us who are half-baked or instant students of Vedanta, quick students of Vedanta, when we all initially want knowledge fatafat se, at that time we think, anyway, this is going into Apara Vidya, so why know it? And here we have missed the most important point, which is very rare also, that a teacher will ever, you'll hear this importance, that the verse says it is to be known. That it is Apara is only in the light of what is Paravidya, because the knowledge is about Paravidya. But just because it is Apara, did the Shruti say it is not to be known? Does it say this is not, don't pay your attention, don't go there, don't do shaksha, don't do kalpa, don't do, is that what is apara? No. Gain that knowledge, because that knowledge will be the stepping stone, will be the ladder, will be what will help you to understand what is Brahma Vidya. But again, as I'm saying, that is what the Vedas would have said each one should know. And then the next one is Chandas. Chandas, I think most of us have understood by now, is the meter in which it's sung, like the Gita sung in Anushtuk Chandas. So there is this, the verses have so much in them, how every verse has number of syllables, and each verse is only that many syllables. And when it is only in that many syllables, it is called this particular and can be sung in this meter. So there are a few meters, Gayatri meter, Anushtup, Trishtup, Prahat. There are a few meters like that. So different verses are sung according to the number of syllables they have. So there is a knowledge for that. So Vairagya Shatakam, I saw almost every verse is in a different meter. There are a few meters used in Vairagya Shatakam of Bhartrahari. Now, unless until he has the knowledge of all this, how does he compose a verse like that? So all of us will be in English poetry. You would see there are styles of English poetry, that you have. So Chandas is that kind of a capacity to learn which meter will apply in this particular verse, and you know how to sing that meter. Again, all of us, I am certainly not qualified in meters at all. It's a knowledge in itself. Haven't had a teacher to teach me these things. So, but for whatever we have just heard, that is getting handed down. And then there is Jyotisham. Jyotisham is astrology, Vedic astrology. And why? Because every karma was to be done for its exact import. It had to be done at the right time, in the right direction, etc., etc. So in certain days, don't do certain things. All this would fall into Jyotisham, also to be known. Once you know all this, Jyotisham, these are the 6 disciplines. And what does the verse say? These 6 disciplines, the Shad Angas, are all of them, Shad Angas, 6, Shad is 6, 6 Angas is Apara Vidya along with the 4 Vedas. That Apara Vidya is to be known. And then Atha Para Yaya, last line of the verse. Now he says, Para Vidya Yaya, by which Tat Aksharam Adhigamyate. Tat Aksharam. Tat refers to Brahman. What Brahman? Aksharam. जिसका kshara nahi hai. Kshara means vyaya. Vyaya means change, decline. That which declines gradually is kshara. Akshara. Adhigamyate. Gam is the root. Gam dhatu. Gam means to go. But adhi prefixed with gam means to gain. Most often the meaning changes to become to gain. Adhigamyate, with which, what is Paravidya? Paravidya is that with which you gain Aksharam. Vidya of Akshara. What is imperishable? What is indeclinable? What is changeless? Etc. This we will now continue in the next class. I will end the class here. So mantra 5 is just enumerating what is Aparavidya and what is Paravidya. So up to first 5 verses, I'm hoping that you are connecting it to be able to keep a vision going. So with this, we'll end the class. I'll do the Shanti Patha. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhave. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, wishing everyone peace and health for your family and friends, Keep safe, take all the precautions, and we'll meet again. Hari Om. Namaste.